I'm Adam Daniel Mezei from adamdanielmezei.com. This is another ADM video blog, and today we're going to do a book review for a book that I finished off yesterday called Somewhere Inside: One Sister's Captivity in North Korea and the Other's Fight to Bring Her Home. These are the two Ling sisters, Laura Ling and Lisa Ling. For those of you who don't know what this book's about, it's the most recent pair of American journalists who were apprehended crossing the North Korean border illegally on a story. And in this case, not only were they apprehended, but in Laura and Euna's case, they were smacked around a little bit, beaten pretty aggressively, and then dragged back across the border from China into North Korea, which is where the controversy stems from, locked up, and then condemned to 15 years of hard labor in a North Korean gulag, which they never served, but let's get into the story a bit more. The book basically recounts the efforts of the Ling family, and primarily Lisa Ling, who is also a journalist, to marshal all the efforts, all of her journalism, diplomatic contacts, to do her very utmost to save Laura and Euna. Now, the book is a very entertaining read as it stands. It's written in a kind of alternating format, once from Lisa's perspective, once from Laura's perspective, almost like a diary or a journal, two sides of a coin. I really liked it. I've been a huge fan of Current. I love Vanguard as a show. I think the journalism quality and caliber on Current TV, which is a station, of course, bankrolled by former Vice President Al Gore and his business partner Joe Hyatt, I think it's just, it's educational in the extreme. The controversy stems from the fact that the two female journalists had, in fact, crossed the North Korean border illegally. Not only had they crossed the border illegally, but they also arrived in China as tourists without declaring the fact that they were there on a journalism junket. And the story that they were trying to break was about white slavery rackets and the trade that goes on between North Korea and China. Because of the one-child policy in China, that there's a shortage of available women for men to marry, so what happens is a lot of North Korean women escaping the ravages in North Korea, the famines and the human rights violations. They come to China, they marry Chinese men, they end up serving in the sex industry or as prostitutes, or they're beaten by their husbands, and this kind of thing, all of that, all of those negative associations. Also the fact that the Ling family might have caused an international incident. The efforts of the entire U.S. government were marshaled to try to get Laura and Euna home. Eventually what happened was former President Bill Clinton flew in a 24-hour mission to meet Kim Jong-il, who is known as the Dear Leader in North Korea, and got Laura Ling and Euna Lee back. Brought them back to Burbank, California. It was like a whirlwind tour. Everybody's happy to have Laura Ling and Euna Lee back in the United States. Everybody's ecstatic that they didn't have to serve time in the gulag. What I think some of the people that are angry about this book are angry about is the fact that the Ling family almost caused the international incident. Also the fact that Laura Ling and Euna Lee first denied the fact that they crossed the North Korean border illegally. Then they admitted that they had crossed the border illegally, and then they signed a confession to North Korean authorities that they had done that, and basically did everything in their power to incriminate themselves. And then the U.S. administration, in the case of Barack Obama, had gone above and beyond the call of duty to bring them back home. I think everybody's happy that the United States cares this much for its citizens as it does. I think any nation would feel the same way. America is sort of singled out for most of this century because it is the United States. Although I do have to point out the case, and this reminded me of the Elian Gonzalez situation from back in 2000, and for all of you who don't know about that case, it's the little 7-year-old Cuban boy who managed to enter the United States illegally with his mother, who ended up dying. They were on a raft. His family in the United States wanted to keep him in the United States. The INS and the U.S. judicial system wanted to deport Elian Gonzalez, who is now back in Cuba, but he had entered the United States illegally, and as a result had broken immigration law in the United States and was summarily sent back to his home nation. Any way you slice it, Laura Ling and Euna Lee did break North Korean law. We all don't think North Korea and the laws that it has on its books are in any way just or fair, and we are quite all in agreement about the fact that North Korea is a rogue state. It's a holdover hermitic state that is totally abusive of its citizens' rights and everything else. But what the two journalists did was break the law. They are extraordinarily fortunate that they had the context that they did. I can just imagine there are at least 2 other Americans that are now detained in North Korea, and God knows what's happening with them. They don't have nearly the connections that the Ling family has. I wouldn't go so far as one of my colleagues online has claimed, using epithets, and I won't repeat them here, about what he thinks about Laura Ling. And Euna Lee hasn't really come out in public, although she has a book that's coming out in September 2010. She really hasn't done the talk show circuit like Laura Ling has and Lisa Ling. They've been on all the big shows, of course. It's a bit questionable, no doubt. My personal opinion, I don't know. I mean, I haven't been to North Korea, so I can't really say what I think about it. I also want to point out that Laura Ling is very intent in her book on expressing the fact that there were a handful of people during her time in Pyongyang and in North Korea that were extraordinarily helpful to her, and she could imagine in a different situation with a different series of diplomatic relations between North Korea and the United States, that these people would be, wonderful friends, and she would befriend these people in a serious way and even invite them to the United States. She does hold out like an olive branch. But bottom line remains that they did break the law. Are they capitalizing on their celebrity? I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I can't really say. I'm just glad that they're home. I mean, there is no controversy about that. Would I do the same thing? I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, for people to criticize the Ling family, you're not the Ling family, so you don't know what it's like to be them, and you also, I guess, you don't know what it's like to be sitting there in that cell, with the sound of the gavel from a North Korean judge resounding in your ear that you're going to be living the next 15 years of your life in a prison in which most people end up dying in the first few months there. I cite again the case of the Aquariums of Pyongyang, another book that writes about the Gulag. So that was the book review for Somewhere Inside. 316 pages. I sat down and I just didn't walk away till I finished it. That's how great it was. Of course, here's the famous reunion. Clinton. That's Laura Ling's husband, Ian, and Gore, Laura, Euna Lee. And as always, I wish for you the best of things. Big shout out to Chris Jones, Judy Goldberg, the production office, GorillaFilm.com, 1R.